Have you ever wondered if it's really possible to build muscle and burn fat at the same time? Most of us have always heard that you need a calorie surplus to gain muscle and a calorie deficit to lose fat. But here's the surprising twist. Recent research says that's not always true. In fact, multiple studies have shown something called body recomposition, often shortened to recomp. This means you can actually increase lean muscle mass while reducing body fat at the same time. One fitness researcher gathered about 10 studies on this exact phenomenon. His review came out around 5 years ago, and since then, even more studies have supported the idea. So now, we're looking at well over a dozen examples where this unusual effect has been observed. And here's the shocking part. Many of these studies didn't involve a traditional calorie deficit at all. In about 7 out of 10 cases, participants experienced more muscle gain than fat loss, proving that the old rules aren't always the whole story. In simple terms, the studies showed that participants ended up with more muscle gained than fat lost. This means their overall body weight actually went up a little, which strongly suggests that fat loss can still occur even in a calorie surplus, a result that goes against what many of us were taught. Now, let's think about how this could apply to the average person. Imagine someone, not a competitive athlete, just a regular man or woman, who's ready to put in some consistent effort. They're willing to lift weights 3 times per week, add in about 3 cardio sessions of an hour each, and eat at around maintenance calories or maybe just slightly above. Their goal? Build some lean muscle while trimming away fat. So, how should their nutrition look? Broadly speaking, they don't need to eat thousands of extra calories. Instead, aiming for a small surplus above maintenance is enough, something modest that supports training without piling on fat. Of course, this only works if the workouts are done with real effort. That means warming up properly, pushing sets close to failure, and hitting about 3 to 6 challenging sets per muscle group. On the cardio side, keeping most sessions in zone 2 for endurance and sprinkling in a few sprints or high-intensity bursts once a week can make a big difference. This balanced routine, resistance training, smart cardio, and controlled nutrition, is pretty typical of what many motivated people are already doing, or at least willing to do. So, the straightforward advice here is to keep the calorie surplus modest and controlled, roughly about 10% above maintenance. For most people, that usually translates to somewhere around 200 to 300 extra calories per day. But here's the real key. In nearly all the recomposition studies, protein intake was consistently high. We're talking about anywhere between 1 to 1.5 grams of protein per pound of body weight. That's a lot higher than what the average person eats, but it seems to make a big difference. In fact, several studies led by researchers tested this by giving participants an extra 400 to 800 calories per day purely from protein. The results? Either body recomposition took place, or at the very least, there was no significant fat gain despite eating more. Now, these participants weren't just sitting around, they were also resistance training. And what stood out was that protein at such high levels seemed to trigger some unusual effects. For example, it often reduced people's appetite for other macronutrients, possibly increased how much energy they burned during exercise, and even boosted their overall daily energy expenditure without them realizing it. One fascinating detail from Antonio's high-protein studies: some subjects who were eating as much as 2 grams of protein per pound of body weight reported odd side effects, like actually sweating while they slept. That's how much extra thermogenesis their bodies were experiencing. And here's the most surprising part. These participants weren't told to overhaul their diet completely. They were simply asked to keep eating their normal meals, but then add an extra 50 to 100 grams of protein on top. That simple adjustment alone seemed to spark the recomposition effect in many of them. So, let's break this down in practical terms. Imagine you simply add an extra chicken breast, a couple scoops of whey protein, or maybe a few eggs on top of what you're already eating each day. That's roughly 80 to 100 grams of additional protein. And the beauty is, you can distribute it however you like, morning, post-workout, or spread throughout the day. The key point is that it doesn't have to be complicated, just make it work around your schedule and training routine. Now, here's where it gets interesting. In some studies, people reported strange side effects, like sweating in their sleep after bumping up protein intake. Why? Well, we can't say for sure, but it likely comes down to increased energy expenditure. That extra protein may boost the thermic effect of food, increase daily movement without people even realizing it, or even give them more power and stamina during workouts. In other words, their bodies were simply burning more energy. Of course, there's always a catch. When you tell people to eat healthier, like adding extra protein, many tend to over-report the good stuff and under-report the not-so-healthy stuff. Researchers call this the good pupil phenomenon. So, it's possible that in some cases, people were eating less junk food without even admitting it, which could partly explain the results. Still, across multiple free-living studies, the pattern was clear. When people stacked extra protein on top of their usual diet, they didn't gain fat, and many actually lost some. Now, let's contrast this with a more controlled setting. Back in 2013, a study by Bray and his team put participants in a metabolic ward, a highly controlled environment where every calorie was tracked. They tested 3 levels of protein intake, about 5%, 15%, and 30% of total calories. But here's the difference. These subjects weren't exercising. And what happened? As protein and overall calories went up, participants gained both lean mass and fat mass. So, what does this tell us? In a locked-down environment without exercise, extra protein still builds muscle, but it also adds fat. However, in real-life conditions, where people are resistance training and living normally, extra protein seems to shift the balance. Instead of gaining fat, many actually burn it off while gaining muscle. And this effect has been observed consistently in both men and women. So, let's wrap this up and really focus on what all this means for you. If you're planning to add calories to your diet, make those extra calories count, primarily through high-quality protein. Think chicken, fish, eggs, or whey. Pair that with consistent resistance training, and you're creating the perfect environment for your body to gain muscle while losing fat. Here's the really encouraging part. Timing isn't everything. You don't have to stress about eating or training at some perfect hour of the day. The research shows that it's your total daily protein intake that matters most. You can train fasted in the morning, grab your protein afterward, or train at night after a meal. Either way, your body can still respond and grow. This is a game changer because it makes your plan flexible and realistic for real life. And let's be honest, life isn't perfect. Sometimes you're rushing out for work, catching a flight, or just dealing with a busy schedule. Other days, you might only have the evening free to hit the gym. That's completely fine. The key is consistency, not perfection. By keeping your protein intake high and training regularly, you're giving your body exactly what it needs to build muscle and burn fat, even when life throws obstacles your way. What's even more exciting is that this approach works for both men and women. Everyone can benefit from the combination of high-quality protein, structured resistance training, and smart calorie management. No more worrying about strict meal timing or chasing extreme deficits. This method is about making progress in a way that fits your lifestyle. So here's the final takeaway. Focus on smart nutrition, solid training, and consistency. Add your extra protein, train hard, stay consistent, and let your body do the work. Muscle gain, fat loss, and a healthier, stronger version of yourself. Yes, it's all possible, and you don't need to overcomplicate it. Just follow these principles, be patient, and watch your body transform in a way that feels natural and sustainable. And there you have it, the science-backed way to gain muscle and lose fat at the same time, without obsessing over extreme calorie deficits or complicated meal timing. The research is clear. With consistent resistance training, a moderate calorie surplus, and high-quality protein, your body can naturally shift toward a leaner, stronger version of itself. Remember, this isn't about quick fixes or extreme diets. It's about making sustainable changes that fit your lifestyle. You don't need to train at a perfect time every day, and you don't need to count every single calorie to the letter. What truly matters is consistency, effort, and smart nutrition. Even if life gets busy, a flexible approach can still get you results. So here's what you can take away and start applying today. Add extra protein. Aim for quality sources like chicken, eggs, or whey, on top of your normal diet. Train with purpose. Push your resistance training sets close to failure, 3 to 4 times per week. Keep your calories modestly above maintenance, just enough to fuel growth without unnecessary fat gain. Be consistent, not perfect. Life is unpredictable, and small, steady efforts compound over time. By following these principles, you're giving your body the tools to recompose itself naturally, building muscle while shedding fat, even if you're not dieting aggressively. So, start small, stay consistent, and watch your body transform. You don't have to choose between losing fat or gaining muscle anymore. You can do both, and the results can be amazing. If you found this video helpful, make sure to like, share, and subscribe for more evidence-based tips on fitness, fat loss, and muscle building. Remember, the journey may take time, but with the right approach, your body can achieve things you never thought possible.